This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. This week is going to be a little bit different than our typical show. Kim McNicholas is here with me in the studio. Hello, Kim.
Hi, everyone.
So, Kim, it's been a while since you've been on the show.
It has. I need to get to Denver more often.
Yeah, you definitely got to. Actually, we're in the studio together. Usually we're trying these remotes, but we're actually going to be able to see each other this time. Kim, over on her show, over on the Innovators Network, has been doing a series on
health innovation.
Health innovation, which is, you know, as we've seen in the news, healthcare, medical, the cost of medical.
$3 trillion. $3 trillion. The only thing that costs us more is wars overseas. $4 trillion.
It is becoming really top and center, particularly with healthcare insurance. And the fact is that we all want to live longer, right? Mm-hmm. And I spent 30 years of my career predicting the future. And the one thing I can predict is we're all getting old. We're all getting older, right? And so how do we live longer? So Kim has actually been working with a company for quite some time, over the last year or so,
right?
Looking and tracking kind of the whole process of innovation for a new technology. And we're going to talk about that today. So Kim, give us a little bit of background on this work you've been doing.
So Raw Medical Systems, I started covering them a little bit more than a year ago. And what I loved about this company just right off the bat is no venture capital, no debt, profitable probably since year 3. And they're a 15-year startup really in the making, right? They came out, they took the path of least resistance, path of least regulation, brought one product to market, used the actual profits from that, and they turned it around and reinvested into their ultimate flagship product. And what I love about this flagship product is that according to doctors, it's going to be a game changer. It already is a game changer. It is tackling the number one killer in the United States, which is cardiovascular disease. We have not seen a big breakthrough like this for cardiovascular disease probably since Balloon Over the Wire. So this is really, really huge. And I was able to cover the FDA study from beginning to end. And they just knocked it out of the park. They had a 94% success rate in their FDA study, and they had 0 complications. And if you look at their competitors in the marketplace, not one company has that track record. And in fact, one of their closest competitors had a 34% adverse event rate, including death. So this is really a big breakthrough. And I think to date, they've had their FDA clearance since June, done more than 500 cases, almost 600 cases, and still no serious complications. Really huge.
And this is a unique challenge, right? Because medical innovation is incredibly hard because it is a regulated industry.
Right.
So, and you had a unique front row seat watching this innovation happen from that standpoint of actually, being part of it. In fact, I was just teasing Kim before we came on the air about some of the videos and pictures she was posting on her Facebook page.
I have more vasculature than I do anything else in terms of my photo albums these days.
Yeah. Look what on everybody's iPhone. So with that, let's bring in Dean Irwin. Dean, you sat here now. Kim's is a walking advertisement for you from the standpoint she knows all your facts.
Well, it's true. Kim came on board early in the study and was able to watch how we recruited sites to participate in the study, which was not easy. Watched us struggle with some of the regulatory aspects of the study, the IRBs, getting these sites on board, and then the physician training. Mm-hmm. With an innovative product like this, we were not a little bit out of the box. We were way out of the box.
Right.
So let's back up here a little bit. As Kim shared, there's a history with Raw Medical about how you went through the whole process. But let's back up. You don't all of a sudden become an innovator at that stage in your life. So give us a little bit of context, background on yourself.
Well, sure. There are 2 parts of it. One is the story behind the technology, which is a great story. I mean, it started back in the 80s, and
we're going to go all the way back to your age 13.
And that's the story I guess we're going to tell right now.
That's what we're going to go to. Because how many kids could say that they were an actual innovator at age 13?
I don't know. You and I've had a couple of them on our show.
Oh, that's true. Well, nowadays, we're talking a few years ago.
Quite a few years ago. And it was a different world back in back in the 70s. Things were very different.
Right.
And, I'm going to start at, when I was in my, teens, 15, 16, when I started working as an engineer.
No, we're going to go back further. When he was age 13, he left home to fix televisions. He started his own television fixing business. Well, he was an entrepreneur from the very beginning.
And that's right. So when I left home, I needed to support myself. And prior to that, I had gone through the neighborhood and found old junked televisions, did some reading, figured out how they worked, bought myself some test equipment. I had a paper route. That gave me the ability to buy some test equipment so that I could work on these electronic devices. Back then, they were mostly all tube-driven devices. And that got me to the point where I went to the local, television repair shop, and they hired me to do piecemeal work. I continued my study of physics and electronics.
On his own.
And then spent a little bit of time at Stevens Institute of Technology and some other areas learning. And then finally one day I got hooked up with a group that was doing some work at MIT and spent some time there as well as in industry working on some pretty interesting stuff related to thermonuclear fusion.
And here is a guy.
Hold on. Thermonuclear fusion.
From fixing TVs, never graduated high school.
Leaving home at 13.
Right.
Never graduated from high school.
Never going to college.
You go to Stevens Institute. You end up at MIT on fusion.
We need a few more dots in here because we're not putting thermonuclear fusion with a paper route.
Well, actually, it was a straight line. It was I got involved with a company in New York, actually pretty close to where the IBM headquarters were.
How did you get involved? I mean, you're sitting here fixing televisions, right? And
I walked through the front door. Literally just
What
cold.
made you want to walk through this front door?
The name of the company was Universal Voltronics. So it had to be exciting and interesting.
Wow, did you?
There's a new concept of branding.
So, so I walked in, and they brought out this production guy who said, all right, do you know what a screw is? Do you know how to put things together? And so we talked, and he got up and he says, I'm the wrong guy. I need to get you somebody from engineering. So he got somebody from engineering, and we went out, and a couple of guys, Dan Seligman, John Madeleine, and others, took me under their wings and said, all right, we're going to design circuits. We're going to design this equipment.
But at that age, didn't you need a work permit?
Actually, I think that was overlooked somehow. So, again, this was a different.
That's technicality.
This was a different world. It was
technicality.
It was a different world back then. So, yeah, no, I couldn't drive, and so I walked or bicycled to work in the morning, and these guys really helped me work on my technical skills, as well as fitting into a corporate environment. I mean, we had hundreds of employees, mostly a government contractor. And that's when I got involved with the group up at MIT. One of the projects that I was working on was an electron cyclotron heating system for use in thermonuclear fusion experiments. So at that point, I got to work with Jack Schuss and Dr. Miklos Porkolab on the Alcator-C program at MIT, which it was a lower hybrid heating system for use in heating the hydrogen gas within what's called a tokamak to study thermonuclear fusion for a potential energy source to replace nuclear fission.
Wow. At age 15, 16?
I guess I was 16 at that time.
I mean, yes,
I'm trying to remember
Phil,
what I was doing at 16. It wasn't nuclear fusion. I can attest to that.
We've interviewed 13 and 14-year-olds, but they certainly weren't dealing with the next big energy source.
Holy Toledo. So you were working on that program. What came next? We've got just a short little time before I take a break here. But
well, then next I realized that perhaps the pay wasn't all that great at these institutions, educational institutions. So I heard about this opportunity in California. My company sent me out there to San Diego, actually Torrey Pines, beautiful location right on the beach, where the government had another energy program, thermonuclear energy program called the Double at 3. I worked there for about a year.
Was this on their General Atomics?
This is General Atomics.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Holy Toledo.
Oh, amazing.
So that's
General Atomics is an amazing story.
It is an amazing
If you want to
story.
know the backstory on
So this was
atomic propulsion engines for space. That was
Right.
that was the original impetus for General Atomics.
Right, it was Gulf General Atomics,
Yep.
and then Chevron bought Gulf. Chevron realized that they didn't want to be in that world, and it was sold to some real estate developers.
Okay, we're going to pick up. This is great start for the
Good.
show. We're going to pick this up after we take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back. We're going to pick up this conversation with Dean. So, Dean, we were talking before about now you're in Torrey Pines, you're at General Atomics, and you spent how many years there?
6 years.
6 years.
And he started there at what, age 17 now?
I think I was 17 when I
Hold on.
started.
Now, I've been to General Atomics, right? The work there is phenomenal. And you're there without a degree at 17.
And that was a problem. I was the youngest person in the physics department, or any department at General Atomics. I think at that time we had about 4,000 employees. So,
And you had hair down to your waist at that time, too.
I didn't. I cut my hair off
you did
the
cut
day
your hair
before I left for
yeah.
General Atomics.
Yeah.
So
He knew that game.
So I was cleaned up.
you couldn't pull the hippie
That
thing
was
off.
too much.
Yeah,
Too much for them to bite off. So
17 and a hippie. That's a hard one.
yeah. So I realized I wasn't going to try to sell that. So I lopped off the hair and really had a great time there. The physicists there were tremendous. They really helped bring me into a lot of different sections of the company, both from an engineering standpoint as well as from the theoretical and applied physics. We all realized that my strength lied in the applied physics end of it, and so I worked on developing the equipment that's used for the experiments. And so again, the experiments were thermonuclear fusion, and I worked on the maser systems, like a laser, but produced microwaves, very powerful, intense microwaves, again, to heat the plasma for this thermonuclear fusion experiment.
But how is it that someone at age 17 would be able to get into thermonuclear fusion? What is it about you? How is it? I can't even, your career path just catapulted. I mean, it was on the fast track. What is it about the way you think that allowed you to literally do what most people can't even do in an entire lifetime?
Well, it's not really that complicated. I know it sounds complicated, but the parts that I were doing, the maser itself is essentially a vacuum tube. And, televisions have vacuum tubes. So for me, it wasn't all that different. And the electronics that run it are, in fact, not all that dissimilar from those in a television.
Okay, here's what I'm going to point out, though. Right, the difference, what it sounds like, though, is that you didn't hold yourself back. It was like almost like a no fear. Hey, just like a TV. It looks the same,
How
tastes
tough
the
can it
same.
be?
How hard can it be?
Right.
Versus, I think a lot of people in the who've got that idea, it's the fear. They just can't take that first step.
Right. They think
to actually
about
make it.
everything they can't do versus what they can do and what they do know.
And that's really how I direct my energies. Not ever saying, well, that's intimidating, that's an insurmountable challenge. I look at it as, well, why not? Why isn't it the same? What are the similarities, and how can I use those to better understand what I'm doing?
Right, it's almost like innovation by analogy.
Right.
It's like TV, so therefore, why can I apply what on this side? And it's actually one of the key things that we don't teach in education today, right, is that problem-solving skill.
Right.
I have this problem. Does it look like any other problem that is similar? And can I apply something totally unrelated to go solve it?
And a lot of that comes down to common sense.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it and just figure out how it works. there are so many similarities in physics and in nature that you'll see the same problem solved perhaps many different ways, but with a very common thread. And that common thread can tie it all together. And for me, that comes very naturally.
Right. The most successful innovators actually come from outside of a certain industry and apply what they see somewhere else in an industry and ultimately become the next big disruptors, such as Elon Musk with Tesla. He had never been involved in manufacturing of cars before, or outer space as well.
Yeah,
with his other company.
the SpaceX, I think, is the great story for Elon. Like,
that is huge.
Okay, you're going to commercialize space and you're going to launch somebody up in space. Yeah, right. And we were talking before we started the show about the innovation antibodies. So here, if you walk over to my cube, you'd see an outline of a body and then a sign
almost
on
like
the wall.
a crime scene.
Like a crime scene dead body, and there's a sign on the wall that says, "Here lies an innovation antibody." And it's actually quite funny. I didn't do it. Somebody on staff did it, and it's been there now for 4 years.
It was in your spirit, though.
Yeah. Well, but it is pointing out, though, that we can be our own antibody.
Right.
We can question ourselves to say, hey, I can't do that. I'm not smart enough. I don't have a college degree. I can't make this happen. Right? We're all, in some cases, we're our own worst enemies at bringing our ideas to making them real.
I got out of a meeting this morning with a major medical device company. I had introduced my technology from Raw Medical Systems to them about 3 years ago. And they had their panel of experts, their medical expert, their business development experts, their technical experts, and they all thought I was crazy. They said, they're right to my face, they said, that's just not going to work. This is, you can't, the doctors won't use that kind of product. They use this, they won't use that. And
well, something, though, I found is the people that yell the loudest and that your idea is the craziest just reinforces that you're on the right track.
And it was true. That didn't dissuade me. So here I'm back in front of the same group again. And he said, well, everything you promised came true. And so we'd like to wipe the slate clean, forget about the past, and move forward. And we're very interested in what your technology is.
What they're really telling you is don't rub our nose in it.
That's right. It was basically don't say I told you so.
Don't say I told you so kind of a thing. Like, okay, I'm acknowledging it. Let's move on. Let's not, rehash history.
And what was nice is, when I talk about some of the experiences with the product that we're having, I really had an attentive audience. There wasn't a lot of, wow, that's crazy, or that's phenomenal, or, how did you get them to do that? It's just, wow, you got them to do that, and that's really great. So now let's see other aspects of the technology, how it fits in, what's the future, and what can we do with it.
But in you leaving home at age 13, was it something that your parents instilled in you, or some experience from when you were younger that really taught you that not to let what you don't know and have never done before get in the way of what you want to do?
Well, I have children, and I actually see that spirit in them. So perhaps it's just something
natural.
that's in my DNA, where I say, why not? Why can't you leap from this couch to that couch, or why can't you build it this way? Why can't there be such a color or activity?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because you start looking at siblings or children, or in my case, I have 5 grandkids, and I look at some of those grandkids and I'm watching them going, "Oh man, I know exactly where they're heading, right? I know exactly what they're thinking, and they're going to get themselves in trouble, and they do it." Or the creativity that a small kid, take a toilet paper roll, and how many different ways can a small child turn that into a new toy? So we're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to pick up this conversation with Dean Irwin, talking about a little bit more about his history and past, and then we're going to lead into this medical breakthrough from Raw Medical. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Well, welcome back. We're picking up our conversation with Dean Irwin. Now, Dean, in the last segment, you were talking about, this kind of internal drive you have of why not. Now, those of us in the innovation game kind of have what our natural curiosity or why not.
Or stubbornness.
But I think we all have our own stories of it getting ourselves in trouble sometimes. Because we go maybe push that boundary a little too far.
Well, if you couple that stubbornness and that why not attitude with someone who's young, perhaps a teenager, now you can really make trouble. Put that package into a government, lab that also caters to the Department of Defense, and now you've got a real explosive problem.
Literally.
Actually, there were some small explosions, but that's another story. But in one case, in doing my work at General Atomics, we would need equipment, oscilloscopes and things like that from, companies like Tektronix or Hewlett-Packard. And oftentimes these were quite expensive in the, $20,000 or $30,000 range. And back in 1980 and 1981, that was a lot of money. Well, I would call up the rep from the Tektronix or the Hewlett-Packard and say, well, yeah, let's just buy it, bring it on down, and we'll take care of it. And they would sell it to General Atomics. Of course, the proper procedure was to go through the requisition protocol and then have purchase orders done through the purchasing agent with government bids going out for the equipment.
2 years later.
Right. And, of course, I would circumvent that, and then someone would say, well, where did this equipment come from and who did this? And, of course, I was dragged up to the top of the hill where I had to promise never to do it again. Of course, next week was far enough away from me so that didn't seem to stop me. But, so always in trouble, but somehow forgiven most of the time. And ultimately that sort of behavior led to me spinning out of General Atomics and starting my first company. Mm-hmm. And General Atomics was my best customer.
Really?
So I built custom equipment, custom designed equipment that catered to the experiments. So when they had a project, previously they would just ask me to build it. But now they would contract my company to do it. And so that worked out very well. And I wound up working for Western Area Power Administration, Caltech, the Plasma Physics Department of Caltech, on the Phaedrus program.
And how old are you at this point?
I guess at this point now I was 21.
Rip-roaring.
All of 21.
All of 21.
So, and I started the company in an industrial park just outside the gates at General Atomics. And that worked very well. And
that's one way to avoid the purchasing department.
Yes, well,
you're beyond the reach of the gate, and they can't grab you.
And what was nice is that we had a great relationship with a lot of the groups there, and that worked out very, very well.
Did you take your team with you?
No, I didn't. I started first by myself, de novo. I did hire some people out of General Atomics and other companies like SAIC and other defense contractors. And largely that's what we were, although we weren't a defense contractor, although we did do work with the Department of Defense. We were primarily a U.S. DOE supplier.
Okay.
So Caltech, Princeton, Western Area Power Administration, TRW, Lawrence Livermore, those were our customers.
Okay. And so you started that company at 21. So
right. So that went for quite a few years. I think that went for another 6 or 7 years, and then that went bankrupt. There were a lot of reasons for that, but the timing and other issues led to just not enough business coming in.
Right, just earning your stripes at that point.
Right.
I think every entrepreneur needs to go through at least one bankruptcy. I've got stories of having startups shot out from underneath you. So.
Right. So I'm glad that was early on.
Yeah.
So,
but the funny thing is, tell me if you had the same experience though. Once you go through that, you'll do anything not to go through it a second time.
That's correct, and you can get much more creative. And,
yes.
and you actually build up a tool chest to help you navigate.
It's not something you learn from a book. You almost got to go through the fire.
That's right.
Right, to really understand what does that really mean.
And then the hindsight's much better.
Yes.
so that you can actually predict some of these issues before they occur.
Right. It's one of those ones like, okay, I should have seen that coming, but I didn't know what to look for.
Right.
Yeah.
And now, I have a toolbox that I can go into when things get tough, and when you need to have that forward-looking perspective, and say, well, that's okay. It's going to be a rocky road now. I see the road up ahead, or it may be around the curve, but I know it's there. Let's keep driving. Let's put it into low gear and navigate the path.
Do you think that because you were always trying something new, that you had all these little failures along the way, that when you did have that major failure, when you had that bankruptcy, it didn't hit you as hard because you were almost prepared for it? It was like these little failures along the way helped build up to a certain point where it didn't really faze you, that you were able to take the lessons that you needed to learn in that point and move on?
Yeah, at that point, I went right into another startup. Mm-hmm. And at that startup, that leads into the product that we're talking about today.
Yeah.
That was my first medical device foray. And it was a company with just a few people. And we were trying to tackle this job of applying an excimer laser, which it was something I was very comfortable with at that point, to treating atherosclerotic disease.
So did you do the startup, or were you hired into a startup?
I was hired into a startup that was just getting out and just trying to figure out how to develop this.
How did you hear about this startup, or how did they hear about you? Which way was it?
It was very funny. It was a little ad in the paper, and I saw it. And for many times in my career, including at Spatialite, which is Kim knew me from.
I was his assistant.
What? I didn't hear this side. I've never heard this part of the story.
It was during college.
One is, I can't imagine what life was like having Kim McNicholas as your assistant. That could be interesting.
Fortunately, it was a long time ago, and she hadn't developed these habits that she has.
Yeah. So she's learned bad habits
since then.
I've learned to talk.
So that was actually back in '93, and I'm talking about even before then. So yeah, I came in, and the idea was to apply this excimer laser, which again was a gas laser, something I'm comfortable with high voltage and high power. Again, using masers and other types of high power lasers, that's very comfortable for me. And I saw the ad, and I knew precisely that I was the person to do that. And so I went, and of course I was hired.
So did you have an interest in medical, or was it just, hey, I can take my physics, the fun stuff I do in physics, and find some way to apply it? Or was there really a draw for the medical side of it?
At that point, I looked at the medical aspect of the challenge as being just very similar to the aspect of thermonuclear fusion. And
right?
Applying all these different tools to heat the plasma. Well, if we're not heating a plasma or trying to contain a plasma, well, here we're just trying to photochemically ablate this plaque. So it's not really a medical problem. We've got this material within the arteries that we need to dissolve, and let's figure out how to get this energy to do that.
So backing up a little bit, when I think about trying to correlate thermonuclear fusion to plaque in a vein, it sounds like what it really is you've got a toolbox of skills and abilities. And then it's really what I refer to as kind of this constraint-based innovation. How do I take the tools within a certain set of constraints, right? Do fusion, but I got to do it in a very particular way, otherwise very bad things happen. Or in this case, how do I apply it to the plaque problem?
Not have very bad things happen.
And not have very bad things happen.
And it's even more important inside a living person.
And not give doctors and patients a bad day.
Yeah. Do you find that constraints actually help you in the whole process? Or because we've had this discussion on the show in the past around just letting teams go hog wild every which way direction, or do you apply those constraints and actually do they get more creative on when you define those constraints clearly?
And I think that the iterative path is the best. So you actually need to take the first idea and iterate it, make a change, move it closer to the goal, and find out if that's the right way. oftentimes there's a lot of backtracking.
Correct.
But eventually, that type of iterative development will get you much further quicker than the sort of shotgun approach and let everybody run hog wild.
Perfect. Take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue on our conversation with Dean Irwin. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back. We're going to pick up our conversation with Dean Irwin. Now, Dean, you were talking about your company went bankrupt, and this was kind of your foray into medical, but it was the first company that was doing medical with lasers. So
Excimer lasers.
Mm-hmm. So what's the background on that company and how'd that do?
Well, around that time, between 1988 and 1992, there were quite a few companies that were looking to excimer lasers for treating atherosclerotic disease. Excimer lasers are called a cold laser, and in fact are used for LASIK surgery today. So the concept is that you can remove tissue by this process called photochemical ablation. You actually use the light to break down the molecules into their fundamental chemistry. And that is atraumatic. That is, it doesn't heat the tissue, it doesn't cause trauma to the surrounding tissue. Perfect for eye surgery. But imagine if you could sort of dissolve that plaque from within arteries. That's a huge advance for cardiovascular disease. And excimer lasers held that same promise for cardiovascular disease as they did for eye surgery, reshaping the cornea. So it was a natural shoe-in, and we all tried it. A bunch of different companies here in the U.S. and outside the U.S. tried it. There was one tremendous challenge that they didn't have for LASIK surgery, is getting the energy that is photochemically ablative from the laser down to the blockage in the arteries. For the eyes, it's easy. Just open your eyes, and the laser's right there. Mm-hmm. So that didn't require this delivery system. As it turned out, everything that we wanted to use to get the energy there was also affected by the laser radiation. So it was photochemically attacked as well.
Wow.
And so that posed a challenge. How are we going to get this energy there? We tried glass fibers, we tried a bunch of different things, and they all had very serious drawbacks. Either they converted the energy into packets that had too much heat, or you had to lower the energy density or the temporal density, and then it didn't work as well, and it didn't work on some of these different plaque types that were really important. So the challenge was almost insurmountable to the point where at that company we gave up on that.
But you knew that it worked because you had actually done one case with a solid piece of glass.
Correct. We knew that technologically we were on solid ground, no pun intended, but for some later discussions, but because we solved the problem by using a liquid. So, but back to the solid glass, we knew that having a device that could handle the peak energy densities and the peak temporal densities was going to work. Again, but having solid pieces of glass, they couldn't navigate the vasculature.
Right.
So we had...
That would be really painful.
We had a great understanding of the physics and the laser tissue interaction, but we still didn't have a solution of getting the laser energy to where it was needed in the tortuous vasculature of the human anatomy.
So this ties back, because we talk a lot about on this show around the difference between a good idea and a great idea is very rarely the idea, but the timing. You know, needing some other advances or just kind of letting the innovation pause for a while to think about it and then to really come back to it and apply either some other innovation that's come out in the meantime. We talk about this a lot in mobile technologies, right? Need one more cycle of Moore's Law or two more cycles of Moore's Law to get enough compute to be able to solve the problem, right?
And here we had all of these interventional cardiologists with balloon technology just coming out. Devices were being delivered over the wire. That whole endovascular treatment of cardiovascular and vascular disease was in its infancy. So fast forward now, here we are in the 21st century, and that's commonplace today. In fact, almost all of these procedures, whether it's blockages in your coronary arteries or in your peripheral vascular, are all being handled endovascularly. That is, through a small incision in the groin, going up through the femoral artery, and either treating the heart with a stent or a balloon, or treating the legs in a similar manner. So that endovascular infrastructure developed over the time of this pause, when we paused to consider new methods to deliver this laser energy. So you're right. It did take this whole industry coming of age and being prepared to acknowledge and use these tools with support devices as well. That's important to us, and we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Yep.
Did you actually think you were going to come back to it? You washed your hands of it at that point and said, I give up.
Not at all.
And you went on to something completely different.
I went on to do a cardiovascular laser for transmyocardial revascularization just afterwards. I did take a little pause and developed spatial light modulators for scientific applications, and actually that's where we worked together from 93 to 97. But that was directing laser beams for both optical computing technology as well as consumer electronics as well.
So what we're going to do here, this is the first time we're doing this on this show, is we're actually going to have a part 2 to pick up 15 years later the pause on this technology to then talk about what you're doing with Raw Medical, with this innovation that's transforming people's lives today.
Right.
So stay tuned. We're going to pick this up in next week's show. You're not going to want to miss this part of the story. So as you wrap up today's show, just need to do a quick couple of acknowledgments of our sponsor for Killer Innovations. Zoom, providing collaboration video technologies that allow our teams to work together no matter where they are, anywhere in the world, and HP. HP has graciously been providing the technologies and services and support for the show and in the studio. Zoom is offering a free account to the listeners of Killer Innovations. Go check it out, killerinnovations.com/Zoom. It gives you a free account to collaborate with up to 50 people. Check it out. I'm on Zoom every day, multiple times a day. Can't live without it. And then with HP is providing the new gear going into the studio. If you want to check out how that's coming along, you can hop over to killerinnovations.com/HP. As you wrap the show up, check out the show notes. We'll have more information to track what Dean is doing and all of his work. But you're not going to want to miss next week's show to hear the rest of it about how the pausing of that innovation and waiting for the timing to get right to come up with a technology that is transforming people's lives. And Kim will be here for the show for next week. You're going to want to check it out. And thanks for joining us today, Kim.
Thank you. Can't wait to see the answer to the number one killer in the United States.
So stay tuned. We'll be back next week. Don't let the innovation antibodies get you down. Go out there and change the world.